So welcome to the Dear Deidre podcast. I'm Sally Land, the Sun's resident agony aunt, and today we're going to be talking all things sex related. And I'm super excited as I've got two fantastic guests joining me today. I've got Alix Fox, who is the award-winning journalist, broadcaster and sex educator. And I am particularly excited Alix is here because she's a consultant on the script for one of my all-time favourite shows, Sex Education. So welcome, Alix.
No, thank you for having me. I'm ready to get so juicy that innocent smoothies will probably sue us about everything that's far from innocent.
I'm loving it. And secondly, we have Harry Johnson, who's the Netflix dating show winner. That was called Too Hot to Handle. Harry, what have you been up to since the cameras stopped rolling on the show?
I'm still on a sex ban.
Oh dear.
I think you've brought the wrong person on this podcast, because obviously Too Hot to Handle is all about not to have sex. But yeah, I've been pretty busy since the show and just doing a lot of interviews and like trying to gather a few deals up and stuff like that. It's been a bit crazy, to be honest.
So just to sort of start us off, I wanted to ask a couple of rapid fire questions, and you might need a little bit of headspace. So I'll give you my one just to give you some thinking time. First of all, I wanted to ask, what is the worst sex advice you have ever been given? Or it can be sex tip, or you could have heard it. And as I said, to give you a bit of thinking time, I would say that mine was definitely, when you become a wife, it's like every other aspect of married life. You need to look after your husband's sexual needs. It's your duty. So I'll just let that sit there for a while. Alix, what would you say is the worst sex advice you've heard or been given?
Well, I have a litany of stories about bad sex advice, thanks to a 15+ year career and also some time spent fronting a show co-hosted with Riyadh Khalaf on a Radio 1 that was called Unexpected Fluids.
Oh, I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah. We had a blast making it. It was 50 eps long and it was all about real life tales of sexual fails. One of my favourites was a person who tried to insert their penis into the hole in a wooden cheese board and got that stuck. So yeah, definitely wouldn't advise that kind of food play. But we also had just, I think it was an old Cosmo sex tip that was insert your ding dang doodle hammer into a ring donut and have your partner eat it right off you sexily. I mean, all that's going to end up with is sugar up your nose and pubes at the back of your throat, isn't it? It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
I was also approached a while ago by a guy who reckoned he'd got this amazing new idea for a sex toy that was going to revolutionize everybody's intimate lives, and it was his big tip that it was going to be in every single bedside drawer in the UK. It was a menstrual cup that doubled as a butt plug. I'm just going to let your imaginations go there as to how that may work or not. But yeah, I think probably the worst sex tip I've ever heard is take something out of your butt and put it directly in your vaginal canal during your period. That's a bad recipe.
That sounds grim.
That is
no one wants to bake that
bad.
cake, Harry. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you very much. That's three bad tips right there. Harry, have you had a chance to think of anything?
I'd say masturbating before you have sex. It doesn't always work. People say you should do it to last longer when you're having sex, but sometimes you're not horny, or it just doesn't work how you'd want it to. So it's a very bad sex tip.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless you do it about 12 hours beforehand.
Yeah, because there's a recovery time, of course, as well. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the next question I wanted to ask you both is the best sex tip you've ever heard. Alix, are you happy to go first?
Yeah, I always put Alix first, so I have time to think. Alix has got 3 answers for every question. I'm struggling for one.
Well, one that I would offer up, and it's such a broad question, isn't it, but definitely a good one, is learn to understand your own body and your own responses in order to have a fulfilling sex relationship.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm going to chuck one of my favorites into the mix, which is penetration is not the only type of sex. It's not all just about putting a P in a V or a P in a B if you're into anal. There is so much more to a sexual experience than just that one type of sex that is the first one that occurs to a lot of us. My favorite phrase is, putting a pole in a hole shouldn't be your sole goal.
Yeah. Says what it is. Thank you.
And rhymes as well.
Yeah. We won't make you rhyme yours, Harry.
Well, I think mine's similar to your answer, Sally. I think as I'd say more like patience, getting to know each other's what you prefer, each other's preferences, and just not overthinking it and just experimenting as well. I think that's key.
Yeah, that's a big one for a lot of people, is actually just opening up and having the courage to say, that's not working for me, could you try this? One last quick fire question is there an area of sex that you wish was more openly spoken about? And I think the one that I would go for is, I definitely wish there was more gay sex education. So having spoken to a lot of gay people, all the sex education that they got at school was completely aimed at heterosexual sex. So effectively, they weren't getting any sex education. They weren't growing up with a knowledge of how to have gay sex. So yeah, that's the one thing I would like to see improved. Who wants to go next? Harry? Alex?
Go on, Ali.
I'm going to hand it to Harry. You go first, Harry.
I have faith in you. Don't take my answer.
No, of course I won't. No.
I'd say anal sex. Obviously, it's similar to what Sally said again, but I think a lot of guys are freaked out by it, or they assume that if they experiment, they might feel gay or whatever, especially straight guys. So I just think you're into what you're into, and it should be accepted, whatever.
Yeah,
you shouldn't feel a certain way, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's more education around it, isn't it? And so how to do it properly, and also that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gay or bisexual if you enjoy anal sex. So yeah,
I agree. I think definitely a lot more people we know are experimenting with anal play and anal penetration, and you see a lot of it in porn, but when it comes to sensitive real life guides that help make it more comfortable and safe, there's not a whole lot out there, is there, about the backdoor hole. Obviously there's a lot of boxes that I think need to be ticked in greater sexual communication and education, but one that really matters to me, and I'm glad to see that we're starting to make progress on this now, is HIV awareness. I think a lot of people still, when they think of HIV, they've got ideas about it being a death sentence, and their assessment of the situation is very much geared to what we heard in the 1980s, those old adverts with gravestones and a lot of fear. Nowadays, modern medications mean that if you do have HIV, then you can control the amount of virus in your body. It's called your viral load, to the point where not only are you very likely to lead a very long, healthy, happy life, but you actually, once your viral load reaches a level that's called undetectable, you are untransmittable. You cannot pass the virus on. I think that's some of the best medical sexual news I'll ever hear in my lifetime. So I'm on a bit of a mission to scream it from the rooftops until everybody knows about it, knows those facts, because it's great news.
It's fantastic, isn't it, that they've found that science so quickly. I mean, you think it's 40 years relatively since the explosion of HIV happened, and then now we understand it and we can treat it, and people live with it and they live healthy lives as well.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people who lost friends in the 80s and 90s who probably would argue that it wasn't fast enough. And there's been some interesting discussions about how quickly we can synthesize medications and vaccines and things, and what our priorities should be recently in the light of the COVID pandemic. But of course, worldwide, not everybody has access to those medications or the education that you need about them. But certainly within the UK, we've got everything we need right now to wipe out HIV within a generation. It's possible. So I'm crossing my fingers for that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you, Alix. Right, I think we're probably ready to have a look at our first letter.
Dear Deirdre, my sex drive has taken a nosedive and I can't keep up with my toy boy husband. I'm 53 and he's 37. And when we met 10 years ago, we had the most fantastic sex life. To begin with, we were both in our prime, and what he lacked in experience, he more than made up for with energy and enthusiasm. We just couldn't get enough of one another, and sex was a big part of our relationship. We'd do it 2 or 3 times every day. But over the last couple of years, I've started to go off sex. It's not that I don't enjoy it when I'm in the mood, it's just that I'm rarely in the mood. Where once I used to fantasize about having sex all day long, now I just don't think about it at all. And if I'm tired, quite frankly, I'd rather just curl up in bed with a good book and go to sleep. I used to be so horny that I'd jump on my husband the second that he walked through the front door, but now he's the one that's always initiating sex, and he's starting to get fed up with me saying no. He takes it as massive rejection, and I feel like he's pestering me all the time for sex. Sometimes I do give in, just to keep the peace, but that leaves me feeling demeaned and like a sex object, and as I'm not really turned on, penetrative sex can be uncomfortable and leave me feeling sore. He thinks I don't fancy him anymore, or that I'm having an affair. Nothing could be further from the truth. But we're snapping at each other a lot, and I'm worried that if something doesn't change, our marriage will fail. I still love him as much as ever, and the problem is that our sex drives just no longer match. I don't know how to fix this. Please help.
There's loads going on there, isn't there?
Deep as well.
Not a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your initial thoughts, Alix?
For a start, I think I've heard about this problem more times than I've had hot, cold and lukewarm dinners. And there's big research that backs up the fact that this is extremely common. NatSal3, which is the latest iteration of the British National Surveys of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles. There's a mouthful. It's one of the biggest surveys of its kind worldwide. That indicated that 1 in 4 couples will have some kind of perceived problem with a mismatch in libido at some point in their lives or in their relationships. And it causes the kind of issues that we have described here. So the person with the lower sex drive, or the person who is currently desiring sex less, can feel very guilty about that. They can feel worried that it's going to end their relationship. They can feel nagged or pressured by their partner, or anxious about things. And then on the flip side, the person who would like more sex than they're currently getting can feel worried that they're being predatory or pushy or making their partner feel uncomfortable. But they can also feel very rejected and worried that their partner doesn't care about their needs anymore, or maybe doesn't find them attractive. So this happens a lot. It causes a lot of upset. But the good news is that there's also a lot that can be done about it. Yeah,
absolutely. And as we can see here, they've been together 10 years. They'll be through that honeymoon period. She's probably of an age where she might be going through the menopause, which can affect your sex drive, and sort of physiologically as well, can cause dryness. So yeah, there's lots of things that they'll be able to do to sort out the issue. Harry, what are your thoughts? Because the other thing we should both say is that it's not always the man who wants sex more than the woman. It's quite often we hear from listeners and readers the whole time where it's actually the woman who's really frustrated because the male's sex drive drops off.
I think for me as well, there's probably like a lack of communication, because I think obviously they've both got in each other's heads that potentially there might be somebody else involved and whatnot. But I think if you were to sit and work through issues rather than just overthink the possible scenarios, then you can figure out maybe potential options of what to do going forward, rather than just trying to please one another. But yeah, it's must be a difficult situation to be in. But I think she probably set the bar too high to begin with. 3 times a day.
That is sound advice. Start slow. No, I'm kidding.
Harry, you are bang on there. I do wonder whether, because of that new relationship energy, or NRE, that this couple probably had in the early days, where they were sexting a lot, they might not have been living together then as well, so they were preparing for dates and they had time to anticipate the sexiness that was to come. They were probably getting dressed up and making plans, and that does naturally drop off. Naturally drop off is never a phrase you want to hear with regards to your genitals and your sex life, is it? But hey, but yeah, that 2 to 3 times a day that this person seems to think was their normal back in the day is actually quite abnormal if you look at the average. There was a 2017 study that found that for most people in the UK and America, 54 times a year, so about once a week, is very normal a rate of having sexual intercourse. There was also another study that found that couples who had sex more than once a week weren't more or less happy. So that once a week seems to be that like perfect Goldilocks, just right number for a lot of folks. That's not to say that you shouldn't find exactly what's right for you and your partner. It's all about the individual. But just to reassure this person who is writing to us, if you're thinking that something is wrong because you're not humping each other triple times every day of the week, that's probably an unrealistic goal to set for yourself there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. We're going to go on to the second letter now.
Dear Deidre, sex is great for me when it lasts, but it just doesn't go on anywhere near long enough. I was a late starter to it, and perhaps this is part of the problem. I'm a man of 26. 3 years ago, I slept with a girl on holiday, and it was over very quickly. I then met my girlfriend a year ago. I love her and I'm very attracted to her. She's 23. I thought our love life would improve the more we did it, but nothing changes. If we have a row, she brings it up, the fact that sex is quick, so I know it bothers her too. How can I slow it all down and make it a night of passion rather than just a 3-minute wonder?
I take a twofold approach. I think there's things that he can do in private and things that he can do with his girlfriend in the moment that will help. And there really are tons. First and foremost, I'd say, once again, and sorry if I sound like a broken record here, but sex is about more than penetration. If the object here is to make his girlfriend feel like she's having more of a pleasurable time and put less pressure on him, that if it's all over in 30 seconds, then the whole relationship's going to go up in smoke. Foreplay, oral, massage, role play, toys. I mean, there's a list as long as my arm and as long as a porn star's peen of things that you can actually try here. If he wants to specifically train himself to last longer, there's loads of things that he can do when he's on his own. Harry, you might actually have heard of this or done it without knowing what the name for it is. But there's a practice called edging where
I've tried that. I've tried it.
He's on it. He knows.
Do you want to describe it for me? Because I feel like my mouth is doing a hell of a lot of activity here, and I do have a partner, so save some for him later.
Is it where obviously you're masturbating, but you stop yourself from ejaculating, and you keep practicing it?
Harry is bang on about the banging.
After a while, it hurt my stomach a little bit.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting that you say that. Yeah, you're bang on. It's taking yourself to the edge of orgasm and then stopping, so that you start to become aware of how that feels and you're better able to control it. You can also do Kegels or pelvic floor exercises that make you more aware of the muscles that are involved in maintaining erection and in ejaculation, which might have been a little bit related to why you were feeling pain in your stomach after working those pelvic floor muscles time and time again. You can edge either just using your hand like normal, or there are all sorts of wonderful contraptions, and even some that use smartphone, an app on a smartphone to train you and rate your progress. There's one called My Hixel that's very good. It's a masturbation sleeve, so it actually feels more like having sex with another person rather than just with Mrs. Palm and her 5 sons. I'd also recommend maybe some meditation or some cognitive behavioral techniques for this guy, because I don't think it's just about his penis getting so stimulated that he ejaculates really quickly. He's got it in his head that this is a thing that happens to him, and he's worrying about it all of the time. So dealing with that from a psychological point of view would be really advantageous to him. There's a tantric method where, rather than thinking about something off-putting, like, I don't know, gone off milk or BO or whatever, you actually try and, rather than focus on the sensation in your genitals, feeling like you're about to come, think about something more subtle, like the feeling of the air on the back of your neck, or how your toes feel, or how it feels to use your fingertips just to brush against your partner's skin. So it's still pleasant and you're still in your body, but you're just taking the intensity of things down a little notch. I also think his girlfriend owes him just a little tiny bit of compassion here. I can really understand. Yeah. I mean, I think
she's making it worse, isn't she? She's making it worse, saying you don't last very long. So that's in his head as well.
Yeah. And also, the average time for a man during penetrative sex to ejaculation is only 5.5 minutes. So a lot of men put all this pressure on themselves that they need to last, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And actually, average sex is not that long. So just telling him things like that will help him just feel a little bit more relaxed. And
also, he could try masturbating before, which I was on about earlier, because it does work for some people. Like, times it's worked for me before, but times it hasn't. So I think as well, it depends, like Alix said, on your mindset, and even like probably your diet and stuff like that. I don't know. Like, I think everything has an effect on how downstairs works, really. And like, if you're stressed and stuff like that, I don't really know. Like, they could the need to communication is key to any successful relationship. So I think, rather than like the need to speak about it, rather than her like having a little dig at him over it, because as well, he'll just overthink it every time, and it's just spoiling the sex. He's probably not even enjoying the sex, even though he's ejaculating. He's probably thinking, he's worried how long it lasts or what she thinks, and I don't really know. And it's just, they need to discuss it and think of ways around it. That's a really
interesting point that you just made, Harry, that he might not be enjoying sex even though he's ejaculating, and that's something that perhaps a lot of women don't really consider. They think, oh, he's always, oh, it's all right for him, he always ejaculates. And we know that, there's an orgasm gap, that men orgasm a lot more frequently than women do. I think it's 95% compared to 65%, like regularly orgasm during sex. But that's something a lot of people just won't consider, the actual enjoyment. So that's interesting. I think we've got time for one last letter.
Dear Deidre, I feel horny just looking at my boyfriend, but I can never climax when we have sex. We've tried everything, special lubes, different positions, various toys and vibrators, but nothing works. He's recently been making remarks saying I'm too hard to please. I am worried that he thinks that I'm not into him. He's 27, I'm 26, and we've been together for 6 months now. I'd had a couple of one-night stands before I'd met my partner, and I'd never finished during those either. I assume that was because they were always after quite a few drinks, and I was feeling nervous. When I masturbate on my own, I orgasm easily, so I told my boyfriend to do exactly the same, but I don't even get close. Do you have any advice?
Wow, that is messy.
It's really involved. It's
classic Dear Deidre. Yeah, there's a lot going on here, isn't there?
If I was that bloke, even if 3 girls were having sex with each other, I would have left the chat. Literally packed my cases and had gone. Because that's just intense. And another thing I think is she's jealous of their relationship and she's come in between it. That's what I actually think.
That's a really interesting take.
Well, she's just split up. She's just gone through like was it a divorce she went through, or
she found out her husband had been cheating on her.
Yeah, when she's come in now, like leaving the door open and like being a tease, it's just like causing temptation, which is obviously distracting them two as a couple. It's all just distractions, and like you're put in scenarios that you would have never been in if she didn't move in and stuff. So it's, as much as they've had the fun, it's causing cracks in like a long-term relationship. And I feel like I would feel the same, like, especially because they were having sex individually with her. It's like, what if you prefer that, or what if it, like, I'm one of them, like, I know myself, people are like, oh, friends with benefits and that. One of you always catches feelings and it always gets messy, and I think it's not a healthy situation to be in. So for me, I wouldn't be in that situation, as fun as it might be. And he's a lucky bloke. I couldn't do that. Like, I like my own partner and stuff. So yeah, it's not for me.
I think that's brilliant though. You know your own mind and your own character, and it to know from the outset that that's just not going to work for you. We do get a lot of people who ask us, surely, threesomes can work for some people, and classic Deirdre would always have said, absolutely no way, it's the way to ruining your relationship. But I think times are changing now, and there are instances where it can work, but you have to know the boundaries, and you have to be incredibly secure in your relationship as well.
Plus,
you absolutely do.
Sorry, Alex.
No, sorry, Harry, go ahead.
I'll just say one quick thing. I think it as well, the relationship, it probably needs another discussion, like we've said before, on the communication, because I think the relationship obviously wasn't an open one, and now it's become that. Yeah. So obviously there's been wires crossed, and it's a situation they've ended up in and probably not expected to, and now they're kind of in 2D. So it needs to be discussed thoroughly.
I love it. You're spot on again though. Absolutely. It's sort of spiraling out of control, isn't it? They never had that discussion. It's just happened very organically, and it's taking its own momentum. Alix, what would you be saying first off?
I agree with you, Sally. I think just to have a threesome, a group sex experience as a one-off, requires you to talk in advance about what you're going to do if someone feels left out, or if there's the potential for jealousy. How are you going to treat your third, if you're a couple, the third person that you bring in? How are you going to choose them? Do you want them to stay the night afterwards, or do you want to politely ask them to go home? There's a lot of planning to be done just for threesome if it's one and done. What seems to be potentially happening here, and just like Harry, I have got a lot more questions before I can give answers, is that the girlfriend and or possibly the Italian woman here are suggesting kind of a throuple relationship, or some kind of polyamorous arrangement where she actually moves into their bed and stays with them permanently. I'm really interested in what's actually going on in these two women's heads, because I thought it was intriguing that it was the girlfriend who first said, oh, my Italian friend needs to move in. Then it was the girlfriend who went, oh, she just happens to have walked in early whilst we're getting intimate together. Maybe we should try a threesome. And now it's also the girlfriend suggesting, oh, let's put her in our double bed and make it a triple permanently. So I do wonder whether the girlfriend here might have desires to be in something more poly. The Italian lady,
I'm moving to Italy after this, by the way.
Well, if you look at the power dynamic here, let's really hope that she genuinely does want to be having sex with this couple, both together and individually. Because if you look at her stakes in this sitch, she's got the most to lose, potentially. She's the youngest person. She's just come out of a relationship. We don't know how long she's been living in the UK, and how safe she feels here. She's got nowhere else to go. So, and maybe the girlfriend might have come on to her. She might actually feel potentially a bit pressured or coerced or even obligated to have sex with these people in order to keep a roof over her head. And I really want to know what's actually going on there before I say any more. I mean, there's all sorts of, if they genuinely, as as a trio wanted to explore polyamory, there's loads of resources that I could give them, like More Than Two, the website and the book, The Polyamorous Next Door. There's a very famous book, excellently called The Ethical Slut. But just like you, Harry, I don't really think that's what's going on here. If you notice that the guy who's written in, he only talks about sex. He never says, oh, I've actually have quite strong emotional feelings for this Italian guest that we have staying. In fact, he didn't even want her there in the first place. He found it a bit inconvenient, which again might be prompting her to be sexual with him in order to try and assuage him and make him feel better. So I don't think polyamory is really the way that this is pointing for all three of them. But once again, comes back down to communication. I wonder whether they should speak all three of them together, maybe even involve a fourth person as a mediator, so that nobody feels like they're being bullied. I would probably warn both the girlfriend and the Italian person that I wanted to have a chat, maybe in a day or two, so that they can think about things in their heads, they're not caught off guard. I would reassure them that no one's going to be kicked out tomorrow if we decide that things aren't going in the right way. You know, we'll make a plan for the Italian lady to make sure she has somewhere safe to stay. But yeah, once again, they need to have a chit chat before things really start going off the rails here, don't they? It's extreme.
Yeah, they've jumped on that roller coaster, haven't they? And they're going round and around and around. It's going out of control, and they need to slow it down and have a proper chat.
They do. I mean, there's also even the possibility that if Ms. Italiano has just that's not even remotely Italian, is it? I don't know her name. It's difficult to know how to.
I didn't want to say that to you, Alex.
No, I'm a cunning linguist in many ways, but speaking Italian is not one of them. There's a chance that this Italian lady, if she's just come out of a relationship and discovered her husband is cheating, she might be going through a bit of an exploratory phase, and this idea of sleeping with a married couple or an established couple might seem very hot to her now. But how do we know that she's not going to want to go off and try something else soon, or have a different adventure? There's just so many unknowns here, and they can't make decisions without speaking honestly to one another. Yeah,
and I'm sorry, that's a Dear Deidre lead. 450 words. That's your lot. That's how we have to cram it into 450 words. And yeah, it does often, leave a lot more questions, and we have room to explore.
450 words and an e-leaflet. Always a leaflet from Dear Deidre.
You can't go wrong with a leaflet. Or I've upgraded. It's modernized now. We call them support packs, Alex.
Yes, love it.
I'm glad. Thank you both so much for your pearls of wisdom. And I'm just hearing loud and clear from both of you every single time. It's communication, communication, communication. I think that's what we just need to write back to each and every one of these listeners. As a sort of parting shot for anybody who is having any sort of sexual issue, sexual problem, what would you say to them? What would you advise them?
Don't worry about it. Don't overthink it, and talk through it. That's what I'd say. Thank you.
Perfect.
I'd say, provided you're not trying to make a baby immediately, sex is supposed to be about pleasure. So if you're not having a pleasurable time, it's a good idea to respect yourself enough to examine why that is. You owe it to yourself to think about how you can really enjoy that part of your life. There's nothing wrong with taking sex seriously, but there's also nothing wrong with having a good old laugh about it as well. Like you say, Harry, I think sometimes people fret more than they need to about these things. Sometimes we call it sexual play for a reason. Sometimes I think being more playful is a great way forward.
Definitely. Taking the
I've really screwed this up, haven't I? I can't just give a quick answer. I'll prepare one next time.
No, that was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you both so much. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on here today.